Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Coaches Roundtable. It's just me by myself today hosting. We've got Big Mike currently unavailable on a Sunday night, and Tash is preparing for a job interview. So just me by myself tonight. So I do apologise. But we've got some cracking guests to come on, and we're talking special teams tonight. So first off, I'm going to invite Spoonie into the call. Spoonie.
How are you, boss?
I'm good. How's things?
Very well indeed, sir. Very well indeed.
Just, I know you've been here before, Spoonie, but just another quick elevator pitch on where you coached and what you're doing at the national team.
Of course, I used to play for the Glasgow University Tigers and East Kilbride Pirates for 8 seasons in total, retiring in 2012. I coached for the Pirates seniors for a few years, for the head coach of the juniors for 4 years, spent a bit of time coaching at Napier University for 3 years, and I coached the Great Britain National Programme back in 2010 till 2013 as a running backs assistant to Nick Rockwell, and we went to Milan with that, so I was involved with the GB programme back then, and then I was asked by Jason Scott when he was given the role of head coach. I was going to say last year. Was it last year? Was it the year before?
Yeah.
I think we've all lost any sort of semblance of plan. But, I feel like I've been the special teams coordinator for the Great Britain team for about 10 years now. We've still never had a practice. So, so that's my...
Still undefeated. Undefeated.
Longest undefeated run for quite a while. So I don't know exactly when I started, but that's my only role at the moment. I'm not involved in club football, not directly. I'll still always, have a hand in with the Pirates and do bits and pieces there. And the same with, teams like Napier nearby and their youth and junior setup. But yeah, no official ties to club football just now, just GB senior.
Love it, mate. Thanks for coming on anyways. Do appreciate it. Next up, We've got Damon.
Evening, everyone.
Evening. Welcome to the show, mate. Quick little elevator pitch. I can't get my words out today. This is going to be a great show. Quick little elevator pitch on where you're coaching at and your role in the national team.
I currently coach down in Taunton for Somerset Wyverns, youth and junior. But originally I'm from London, so I started in 1986. I actually played in the first ever 2-touch season in 87. I then moved on and started coaching the Ealing Eagles, who become the London Blitz. I went on to coach the Farnham Knights youth team for a few years. Went back and became adult head coach of the London Blitz. Then got promoted and became the youth head coach of the London Blitz. Then I got kicked out of London, went down to Southwest with the family. Spent about 5 years with Ben Herod with the Aztecs youth. Fell out with Ben because he's an awful person. So I left them, went to coach Exeter University for about 5 years, and been doing the Wyverns. So I think coached the GB under-19 Crusaders as they were back in the 90s. I think it was like 93 to 96. Started off as receivers, then was offensive coordinator for a couple of years, then stepped away and came back to coach special teams for the under-17 development for Nelly currently.
Spot on, man. Thanks for coming on. Much appreciated. Next up, we've got Greg, friend of the show as usual. Thanks for coming on.
I'm good, mate. They made me do it, so...
Nah, honestly, thanks for coming on, mate. Quick little elevator pitch. I know you've been on before and everyone's heard it, but say it again for those that haven't seen.
Yeah, grew up in the Lancashire Academy of American Football, moved down to Birmingham for university, represented GB at junior level, youth level, students level.
Played for Birmingham Lions for 23 years.
Played one or two seasons for the Lions.
The longest degree ever at the university.
Did the rounds of the Midlands teams in the seniors, Sandwell, Bulls, and Phoenix, and now don't coach anywhere apart from, like Spoonie, being GB students coordinator and feeling like we've been on a really good long unbeaten run.
Love it. We do have another guest to bring on, but his Wi-Fi is a bit rubbish. Oh, he's coming back. He's back, I think. I think he's put 20 pence in the meter.
Yeah.
Scott,
Sorry.
you got 20 pence in the meter there, mate?
Yeah, it's 50 down here, though. 50 down in London.
Yeah, it's pricey down there, man.
Sorry about that.
It's all right, mate. Just a quick elevator pitch on where you're coaching and your role in the national team, if possible.
Yeah, certainly. I'm Scott Rowe. I am the GB under-19s special teams coordinator. I currently hold the role of director of coaching at the Kent Exiles. Done that for about 7 years now. I've been involved in GB for a while, mainly the juniors for the last probably nine years, I think, in various roles. Before that, was involved in the senior program for a little while and playing career and early coaching days with the London Olympians mainly, London Warriors for a short period. Yeah, but been around for a while, as I'm sure other people on here can probably attest to.
Nah, I'm new, mate. I'm new. I haven't been here at all. Just
I
new
think
to
I
the
actually
game.
played against Scott in '91 or something like that. It's youth kitted.
That's the year I was born.
Yeah, that'd be right. That'd be right. Thank you. That doesn't make me feel old at all. Thank you.
It's a typically humble introduction from Scott, because anybody who knows anything about him, his playing and coaching career have been pretty phenomenal. And yeah, but that was a whistle stop tour. But if you ever get a chance to sit down and buy him a shandy and find out all about it, it's a hell of a story.
Cheers, Spoonie. Thank you.
Spoonie? I think that's the first time you've mentioned shandy and not whiskey or Buckfast or something on this show, you know.
Athlete.
It's changed, hasn't it? You've changed.
You keep
There it is.
Hey, there it is. There it is.
We knew it was coming on. So basically, the aim of the show today is we're going to talk over the special teams. There is some really basic things that we want to cover, and then some more things that are in depth. So we're trying to hit the targets of everyone here. We've had some comments come in here. Oh, okay, but it's Chris Peel. Chris Peel said hi to Spoonie. He said hi to me. He's not saying hi to anyone else. That's not very nice, Chris Peel. And then he says, Buckfast Nations represent. That's shocking. Absolutely shocking. So basically, we're going to ignore Chris from now on. He's had his claim to fame there. He's been mentioned on the show 3 times now, so that's enough. So, first question. Nice and simple one to get started. What is special teams? Anyone can go.
I wish I knew at youth and junior level. I wish they had such a thing. I think it's criminal that under 17s and under 19s to a lesser degree have virtually no special teams.
I get
It's
that.
tough under 19s. I found that when I was the head coach. Just the fact that you've got those missing bodies makes things like trying to kick field goals and protect the edge when you've got 2 missing guys really, really tough. So it almost in some ways sharpens like your long snap and catch and kick have got to be so crisp, otherwise there's just no chance of getting them off. But to answer the question more broadly, special teams is effectively any point in a game at which either team is kicking the ball. That's basically it. You know, you've got kick off, kick return, you've got punt return, and then you've got a field goal or a point after, and you've got the units attempting to block it.
Love it. There we go.
And that in itself's an interesting one, actually, Adam, because I think this is probably going to come up, but there are parts of special teams where the question is always, and I'm sure all the guys on the call have had these discussions locally, both at GB and at club level about, do we actually install this, for example, punt return as a special teams thing, or do we just do something with the defense? Do we install a specialist field goal block, or do we just do something with the defense? So when you're a special teams coordinator, you've always got that relationship with the defensive coordinator to think about, what personnel are you going to use for these situations? Are you going to make it something that's quite bespoke and unique, or are you just going to do, a variation of something you would already do on defense? So that's an interesting topic in itself.
Especially at representative teams where your time's limited. I pretty much twisted Nelly's arm to basically get rid of punt return. We had just had a safe catch, and everyone. The idea was just to not make any mistakes or extend the drive for the offense, and that was it. Yeah. There was no scheme to it. It was just don't mess up.
Oh well, that brings me straight on to the next question. Then, is punt return worth the time at practice?
Yes.
At team level, yeah. At representative level, not necessarily. I'd love to see if anyone could ever post a video where a punt return is returned for a touchdown exactly as it's drawn up scheme-wise. I bet virtually all of them are just some guy that's got skills as a returner.
Returns situations in British American football, especially, I find, to Damon's point, are very much that X factor thing.
Yeah,
you know, like you've got guys like Josh Amos at the GB team, and players who can just do something special and make things happen. But I guess, like anything else, the proper answer really is, if you are in a team that's got the suitable amount of time to install and to refine, then absolutely, because there are some specific skills, as Damon says, there's that thing of like, don't make a mess of this, but training people effectively just to field punts in itself is a really difficult thing. And so making sure that you do that, because just sending somebody with hands out on the field and saying don't make a bollocks of this is a recipe for them to do exactly that, so you really do need to take the time to do it. But I guess it's like anything else. It's almost in the hierarchy of, if we had this many hours, we would focus on this first, then this, then this. Sometimes that's punt return can be a thing that falls quite far down the list.
So this was brought up, okay, and I wasn't actually going to put it in the question, so I haven't actually wrote it out, so I'm just going to ask it anyways. Is it actually a third of the game?
Statistically, points-wise, it is.
So
it accounts for 34% of the game, just purely based on field goals and extra points. But the third of the game, I always think of as, if you split it up in huddle, for example, and you've got offense, defense, and special teams, then it's not a third of the game in terms of the number of plays.
Yeah.
So you can argue both sides of this.
Depending on your offense, I bet punt is probably the most repped play in most British football. For teams that do punt, obviously, I know there's some that don't. Before you jump in, waving your hand over there.
Yeah, we don't punt. We onside kick every time we punt. We don't punt. I love it. That's how I roll. So if it counts for 34% of the time, why is it not practiced at the same sort of time scale as what offense and defense is?
Because
it's an afterthought in British American football a lot of the time. In truth, that's been one of the challenges, and I actually spoke about this in the short recorded things that we've shared. I don't think they've gone up yet, have they?
They have. They've just been posted today.
Just gone up.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that in mine at one time. One of the things I saw historically in Great Britain was a propensity towards, we'll get our best players on offense and defense, and then for all the other guys to make sure they feel like they're getting something for their subs, we'll throw them on special teams. And so there was a lot of that went on where it was like the guys were either an afterthought or it was like a thanks for showing up kind of thing. And so as a result, the execution on special teams in a lot of cases wasn't particularly sharp. But I think it's like anything else. If you've got a team with quite a prolific coach in it who's really special teams minded, that'll become something that you really make a focus on. When I was the head coach at the juniors at East Kilbride, I was the special teams coordinator for 3 of those 4 years, as well as I was the OC for the first year, as well as head coach, and then special teams for the next 3. So as a result, I put a real emphasis on it. But I would say, our specialism was kick off and kick return, really, rather than anything else, because that was where I really wanted us to. I felt like we could have the biggest impact on the game there. So it's kind of like anything else, it's all up to the whims of the coaches and the skills of the coaches as well,
So
yeah,
that's the thing Yeah,
I was just going to slightly follow up on something Spoonie said. Sorry to cut you off, Adam.
No, go for it.
I always think that how you as a coaching staff approach special teams is how your players will approach it and execute it. I really believe that. If you make it a focus and make it a focal point of not necessarily a practice, you don't have to spend a third of the time on it. But if you have a dedicated special teams period, and your coaches are engaged with it, and it's not just left up to you as a special teams coordinator, and they say, oh yeah, special teams, go and see Coach Scott. That's and everyone else goes off for a chat. They figure it as 15 minutes, 20 minutes of them to have a chat and catch up on practice so far. I think the focus that you put on it as a staff and as a coach yourself really will reflect that in your players and your team.
Absolutely.
Here's a question for you: what's the most important role on any of the special teams? So if you look across all of it, what's the most important role? Go on,
I think long
someone.
snapping. So
Long
if only
snapper.
Andrew
Long
Jarvis,
snapper.
if only Andrew Jarvis was on this, because he'd be all over it. But long snapping is something that I think. I mean, ultimately, because it appears in both kickoff on kicks, for points and on punt. You know, long snapping is something, and also like we talked about, things like setting the edge can be so difficult against a really talented, aggressive team that the length of time it takes from the ball to go from the ground to the holder or to the punter can be fundamental in your success. So I think there's a lot to be said for having a really good, well-drilled long snapper for sure.
So
Yeah,
I disagree.
Oh. I wish I had some nice music to put in
I
here.
disagree, Matthew. I disagree. I think in the UK, really the only position on special teams that can help you control a game, because there's so many variables with British special teams play. But actually, if you stick a good punter back there and somebody, most long snappers, even the Andrew Morgans of the world, can somehow get you the ball to your hands. Actually, if you've got someone who can then knock the ball 50, 60 yards downfield, like Jaquette at the Warriors, who's just like an unreal kicker, they really do move the field for you in a way that really nothing else you can guarantee on special teams in the UK does. So I'd actually say that having a good punter is probably the most important thing, in my opinion.
I think punter's easier to find than a good long snapper, just because we're a nation of people that kick lots of balls. So statistically, we're more likely to find a goalkeeper that can boot it far, or a fly half that can kick it far. They just translate. We just have a lot more kickers. So yeah, I'm on the side of Spoonie of a long snapper. When I was at Exeter, we was lucky enough to have an American kid that came over for the year, and by chance he was an all-state long snapper, and it was just differently couldn't compare. And I think he's long snapping won us several games, including playoff games, for sure.
I think another reason why I say long snapper is because you talk about that, those great punters, Greg, and without a doubt they can be phenomenal weapons. But ultimately the question is, can you get them the ball in time for them to do something with it? And also, as somebody who played centre for years, with Ryan Hunter as my quarterback, people were always like, "Oh, you guys are a one-man team, and it's Ryan Hunter does it all for you." And I was like, "Yeah, but who's the guy who gets them the ball?" Do you know what I mean? That's where the real talent is on that team, and people just never understood it. They never got it, and I think it's just the same principle here,
See, from me, I rate a long snapper. I really do rate a long snapper. I mean, if you need one, in the men's team. By the way, I know a guy. It's all he can do, but I know a guy.
It's when it's done well, it's just like a really smooth, really effective long snapper. There's something really beautiful about it,
You know what
it's the consistency. Right? You can get consistently. If you can get someone that can do that, sort of 9 out of 10 times, it can be good like that. I mean, we can all find a guy that can do one perfect long snap, and then the other 4 high, low, bouncing, or whatever. So if you can find someone that's consistent, then you're in a good place.
For sure.
It's the guys that can snap to both right and left-footed kickers as well. Like a centre that can snap to a left-handed and right-handed quarterback. Game changer, that, by the way. Absolute game changer. See that? Long snappers, there's your credit. You never get mentioned again. Right. So, obviously, we've mentioned a bit of punt and things there. So, I'm going to mention this early. I'm going to bring this up real early just to please Greg. So, shield versus pro-style punt.
Here we go.
So, explain what they both are, Greg. This is over to you. Explain what they both are. And then we can all argue after that.
Okay, so pro-style punt is the type of punt you'll see in the NFL and probably the kind of top 15 to 20 at college, where you basically line up a full line of people with 2 gunners and they go. Shield is the one that in the UK gets blocked all the time, but it's actually the one that has 3 guys sat in front of the punter. Everybody else releases, gets width, chases the ball downfield, and the 3 blockers are left to pick up the rush.
And you've got the guy that's like facing sideways and then does this.
Yes.
The ball gets snapped and he steps in. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. Okay.
So let's go, Greg. What's your opinion?
So I have a very strong opinion of this, which is why Wilf asked it. So there are a set of fundamental things that you've got to be good at to do the shield punt well. You've got to be good at long snapping. You've got to be good at identifying blocks. And you've got to be good at executing blocks with linebackers, ideally, rather than O-linemen. 3 things we are particularly bad at in the UK. Long snapping, identifying blocks, and picking up blocks with linebackers. So, ultimately, we don't have the skill set. It's very like a college football thing to do it. And the reason it works at college is because they are good at all those things, and the people there blocking are not quite as quick as they are in the NFL. The NFL, it all breaks down as a concept because, well, rules, but also you wouldn't be able to do it because they'd be so quick to the point of the kick. Unfortunately, in the UK, most people we see do it just can't get the ball to the punter quick enough to allow what can be 10 guys running directly at the foot and get them blocked by 3 guys. So basically, as a
Greg,
rule,
would you say on that there then the long snap was more important?
oh yeah, the
There it is. We got him. We got him, guys.
on the shield, the long snapper is literally like so important. It's unreal. I've probably only played around 1 pairing who I thought would be able to do it, and Dave Jennison to Dom Gould probably could have run an effective shield. But yeah, there's just not the execution, like the level of execution in this country to run it well. So on the basis that most people, their punter isn't then going to pass out to a fake, if you get a shield punt, just send 10 guys directly at the foot and see how often you win. That's it.
Anyone got an argument?
Opposite view.
Yes, Scott, go for it.
Nice.
Right. Now, I'll tell you this, right? I used to be very much a pro style guy, my early days of coaching and stuff, right? And when I played, it was all pro style stuff, right? However, I've become a convert. And the reason for that is that I think it is incredibly unnatural to try and teach the personnel you would hopefully have on your punt team, which is generally, as Greg said, linebackers, bigger DBs, people like that, okay? To be able to kick step and protect effectively, I think, on that pro style thing. If you see it done very well at pro and college level, okay, those guys are on point, right? I think, and especially when you have limited time with people, okay, for me, I find that teaching guys in the shield style, where you're coaching them up to what we do at GB is we coach them to run through a particular shoulder, depending on which way we're directional punting. I think it's much more natural for those type of players to be in a forward position and they get a block in the sense of not like an O-lineman block, like you're planting yourself and you're setting yourself, but actually to block on the move, okay, and get a almost like a touch block, if you like, sort of thing, just to divert the rusher's path. I personally find that to be a much more natural fit and a lot easier to teach people rather than having them to kick step, plant and drive, and the way that naturally you'd be taught in a pro style. So I am very much a convert, and I think I just think it's a time issue as well. I think if I can line up sort of 6 guys at GB, 7 if you include the long snapper, and have them literally sort of step a direction and run through a shoulder, I find that easier to do, and I have done over the years. And I say I'm a convert because I was like Greg. I'm like, you know what, pro style is what I've played and what I want to, I initially thought about, but now I'm like, I'm a convert. I'm a shield guy. I'm a shield guy, 100%.
I don't disagree with any of that, Scott, on the blocking front. I just think for most teams and most sets of personnel in this country, like the execution that goes on behind that is what's going to kill it. Rather than, but I absolutely agree. Like it takes too long in most cases to train linebackers to kick step well and get width. But yeah, I just don't trust. I don't trust the core execution behind the blocking, and I don't see it done well often.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. Fair enough.
Damon,
That's
what's your
another thing
view
with
on
all of this. It's always, irrespective of what week this was and what coaches clinic we're chatting through, there's always that element of, who have you got on your team and what are they capable of? That's a big part of it, is seeing what your guys can do. Because again, whenever we talk about practice time, it's that thing of, if I've got guys that are really, that have a skill set that really lends itself towards one of the two, in order to minimize, trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and we'll move towards that. And that's why I think as coaches, it's it's on you to have that. You don't need to be an NFL level special teams coordinator in every single possible iteration of a pun, but you need to know enough to be able to say, actually, I think we'd have more success at this. And again, to Scott's point, I think one of the things that shows a real maturity and humility in coaches is the willingness to recognise when actually the thing that they've been dogmatic about is wrong. Because we've all seen that, especially with the offenses and defenses, where people are like, oh, I'm a split back veer guy, and you've got a group of guys around about you as players who are just not in any way suited to run that, but you keep trying to hammer it home rather than doing something that would help them. So yeah, make sure you've got a good enough versatility in your coaching staff to be able to work with what you have and be realistic about what's in front of you. We would all love to be able to just draft our players and pick exactly what we want. But, even at GB level, this is another thing that, we all find is the guys that we get to work with on a GB level for special teams are maybe a few specialists, if we're lucky, and the guys that the offensive and defensive coordinators wanted to have on that plane. So we're working with the capability they bring in, and obviously we'll discuss that. And I'm not suggesting that the head coaches aren't open to discussion, but really it's about who can run the offense and defense, and then what can we get them to do in special teams.
Damon, what about you? What's your thoughts on it?
If I had to install a punt tomorrow, I would go with the pro style. However, I was only anti-shield because of ignorance, really. And having worked under Scott and seen how his shield is installed, I think you can get a better level of athlete on the field with the way he coaches it.
No, I like it. I mean, we've had this come in from Chris. What about a rugby style punt? So I'm assuming he's there just let the quarterback.
Yeah, both. You can do that out of both.
Yeah,
that's just rolling the kicker.
For me, I just think letting the quarterback kick it just out of disrespect the special teams.
I also think, though, in British American football tradition, there's a lot to be said for just like punting on first down.
You may laugh. I'm pretty sure I've done that in the past.
I've seen it happen.
I don't punt.
But then again, I've also seen quarterbacks spike the ball to stop the clock on fourth down. So it's not necessarily to say that that's the right approach.
I've seen someone absolutely rocket it off someone, like that was their shield. Like take the snap and just absolutely rocket it off the back of their helmet. That was brilliant. That, like, how these helmets get tested by dropping them, make sure the top's fine. The back needs to get tested when you're in those shields, man.
The Virginia Tech helmet studies are not booting balls at the back of people's heads regularly, I suspect. We need a different type of hard cat in this country.
This poor guy was absolutely flattened on the floor.
There's definitely a time and a place for a QB quick kick in certain weather conditions and certain games. It might only happen once a year, if that, but it's definitely a weapon worth having. Definitely in bad weather games when neither offense is moving the ball. You got someone that ain't going to return the ball, and it could change the game.
Especially when the quarterback rolls out and goes for a QB keeper, and then just as they're about to get lit up, pretends they're going to kick the ball and they get flagged and you get the 3 yards. That's always a winner too.
I've seen that happen before as well.
Likewise.
John said third down quick kick can be what? No, take your downs, man. It's just not right.
You might have minus 10 yards of offense.
So the next play could be 50.
That's why you'd be running stretch left on that third down, and also you'd run it on the first and second down as well. To be honest, so you'd be flying.
So moving over to like a field goal, how much are you using that offensive coordinators? Yeah, when it's coming up to that red zone situation and you guys are looking to kick third down, are you saying, right, our kicker's better from that left hash? Do you want to start thinking about running the ball that way so we can get over on that left hash, or do you just let him do what he needs to do? And tell your kicker to kick wherever it lands?
I tend to be. Yeah, but that is true. But I would probably tend to favour. I think probably because I come from an offensive background, I would tend to favour doing things with the offense first and almost using special teams to, to kind of clean up the mess. Almost, it's not the ideal phrase, but that kind of thing. Is I don't want to necessarily be tipping the offensive coordinator's hand because he's got his job to do, and I want to make sure my guys are prepared for all. If it's a critical situation though, where it's been a total stalemate and it's like this 3 points could win you the game, then I want to be putting the ball on, say, the right hash, because that's where I know we're better. So yeah, I think Damon's right. It's like in an open game where we're doing all right, I would let the offensive coordinator do his thing and we'd come in and step it up. But yes, Nelly. But from the point of view of those really tight ones, yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for saying, let's, we're working as a team here. We're all working to try and put points on the board and win the game. So let's put ourselves in the best position to do that.
So when we're talking about taking a field goal, what depth are we kicking from behind the line? Like, what do you guys do? Because I've heard it 20 or 30 different depths that people are kicking from. Is there like a set depth that you guys are sticking to, or what?
7,
7.5, yeah.
7.
Yeah,
7, yeah.
So 7 yards deep from the line.
The only thing I've moved and changed no end on extra point field goals is the 2 wing backs on the outside. I've had them in all sorts of various angles, depths, trying to help the timing. So I'm completely open for persuasion on where the wing back should go.
Come on then, someone help out. Where should the wing backs go on that?
Well, what's people's preference?
I want Spoonie to draw it up on his whiteboard. Draw it up on your whiteboard.
2 yards off.
Historically, have them angled at kind of 45 degrees off the outside guy, but I know there's different kind of ways of thinking about this, and having them square and having them sitting in behind. What's your thought on that, Scott? That's a good question.
Sorry, we're talking about the wings on the edge.
Position and alignment of your wings on a field goal.
I like them to be angled with their sort of just off the edge of the thing. Sorry, I've just got to charge this phone before it cuts out. I also look at personnel very much on those wings. This is something I've said before, but I think we kind of you really need to look at the type of personnel you put in there. I always look for really long guys. Hello? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're still here.
Bit of technical issues here, but it's okay. I'm back on. Yeah. I really look for those long guys, and that could be like a D end, outside backers, anyone with a bit of length, because I love the fact that we can punch and reach. You know what I mean? We can make ourselves as big as possible. So I really look at the personnel, and I like to have them angled. I like them to protect their inside gap first, and then obviously try and get a punch on anyone coming around the edge. I suppose I'm quite traditional in that, but that's what I do.
Yeah. My moving around was based on there's always going to be 2 outside guys that you can never block. Potentially, they can send more than you can block. So where do we position those to make sure that they can't make the block?
Yeah, you minimize the impact of those extra guys, definitely. Yeah. And that's why, going back to the point right at the top of the show, was that's why the 9-man thing. And it's one of those ones where youth and junior football is not necessarily set in, the structure of youth and junior football is not necessarily set in our, game as a whole in the UK up for success, because those young guys at under 16s are not getting a chance to play special teams at all until they go to junior. When they go to junior, it's a very watered down version of it. I mean, even things like, kickoff coverage in 9-man football, you've got 9 guys to cover the whole field versus 11, So if you have an X-factor player in 9-man as a kick returner, you can rip people a new hole with that, And that was why when I made the point earlier on about, why I focused on that was exactly the reason, because I thought we can turn the game around here. And we scored a lot of touchdowns and got a lot of really good field position off those kick returns in 9-man, purely because you're asking an awful lot of your players. And that's why I think sometimes, and I understand there's a lot of reasons for it, but, our under 17 or 16 and under 19 structures don't really lend themselves to developing great special teamers. You know.
I completely agree with that.
Absolutely right.
Well, what's the answer though?
Well, that was exactly what I was going to say. That what is the answer? Because ultimately, we're struggling to get the numbers to have enough teams to make it viable at those two age levels without adding any more requirements for squad sizes and stuff. So it is really, really tough. The answer is
some kind of
board investment in getting more
kick and punt competitions.
Yeah,
have some separate competitions that involve them in some other way.
Just take every youth team that's in your division. So all the Scottish youth teams go together to make one team. All the Northeast go together. All the teams go together and play 11-man football against the other ones before you get to GB. Done. More football. More chance at it.
That's on the cards, I believe.
Yeah.
I know, mate. I know. It was a little clue.
Something that's been looked at for a little while, and I know there's just always a lot of challenge with these things and logistics and costs, and ultimately sometimes reticence from the national governing body to get involved with this. But Nelly and I have spoken about this quite a lot about how do we do exactly that, and how do we get players ready? Because I guess to Damon's point, his position is taking a load of guys whose only football to that point has either been flag or 5-man kitted and trying to turn them into an 11-man team. In a situation where they don't even have any games to play, probably, it's a really big ask. It's like, do you fancy travelling from Inverness down to Bristol for a camp where you might not get selected? You'll play effectively a sport you've never played before because it's 11-man football, and then if you do make it, you'll be privileged to get to go back to Bristol 4 times a year and practice for games that will never happen. It's like, Jesus, what an appetizing opportunity that is. So I do think if we can get some regional stuff going, that would be fantastic.
I think it's got to be. We've seen it in the women's model before, so I don't understand why we can't do it at youth and junior level. They've played 11 football, so what youth and junior wise, it makes sense in my opinion.
Yeah, the women's game, the way they've structured it, focused that step up thing over the years has been excellent, really.
Yeah.
Without bringing up bad memories for them, I believe they pretty much lost their semi-final because of special teams or poor special teams because they didn't get the chance to practice it much.
Yeah.
Oh, Nelly, look at Nelly commenting straight away. It's in the works, he said. Well, get it done, mate. Come on, stop watching this. Get on the bloody bandwagon, get it sorted.
He's had a busy 18 months.
Yeah, it's been rammed, hasn't he? Absolutely chuck out all those training sessions. Get it sorted.
Given the frequency of training sessions and the amount of prep that Nelly put in when he first got this job, he's effectively got every practice from now until about 2035 scheduled ready to go,
He's got every training plan wrote out, ready to go.
It's a good job Ben didn't hear the beginning of this call.
Just exactly. I wonder if that was a response to it when you roasted him at the start.
It would have been funny.
Really delayed response.
So, obviously, special teams there's loads of different things. You've got punt return, like we've mentioned, kickoff. I'm not going to go into my beliefs on kickoff, okay? But how do you guys teach kickoff?
That's a big.
I think the way we changed kickoff. Sorry.
Pardon?
No, I was just going to say, I think the way we've had to teach kickoff has had to change a little bit, to be honest with you. And I think it will change further. I think as special teams coaches, I think we've got to be aware that we're going to have to adapt, with all the new stuff. It wasn't that long ago, well, maybe it was, where, you just told your guys, steam downfield, smash anything in your path, you know what I mean, at 100 miles an hour. I mean, obviously they're taking that out of the game. And I think that's an important part that over the years, we're going to see so much change in, sort of them reducing the contact level on things like kickoff, which used to be like, they called it kamikaze squad for a reason,
The wedge buster.
And listen, I'm not.
Oh God, yeah, flying wedges and stuff like that. Crazy.
I'm a big believer in the changes that the sport's making to make it safer and to look after our players and especially young people and stuff. But I must admit there is something about the loss of that level of carnage that I really do miss because there's nothing quite like 22 people just going full. It was like something out of like 300 or something. Do you know what I mean? Just like when the Spartans are at like Thermopylae, and it's just absolute carnage. And like, I think there was a kind of like a primal beauty in it, but yeah, I can see why we've moved away from that, because having people just in piles on the ground after the first play of the game is probably not great for its longevity.
I remember my first ever adult game where I looked to my left and my right, and there's people like slavering, ready to like go and hit someone on kickoff, and they're like snarling that. I'm like, "Are you for real? What's going on here?" They just run down, dive head first at people and stuff. It was horrific, absolutely crazy. I got battered. That was East Kilbride. You boys absolutely kicked my arse that day.
It was good. It was good. There is something that was really special about it, and you could, there were certain players under those kind of conditions and special teams who just thrived. That was the sort of almost like reckless abandon that they were just like, that their life didn't have outside of those special teams moments, and they were able to bring everything, and it was awesome. But yeah, I think we can all agree that for our long-term well-being, it's probably not ideal.
So what's changed mostly now for if you're designing your kickoff, for example, what's different now? What are you doing? How are you teaching it? Because I haven't seen many kickers in this country that can kick it out the back of the end zone.
You can on the 90-yard fields. I don't think it's that unusual on the 90-yard fields.
No. It's especially when you've got, at least one half of the game when you can, because there's usually like a 40-mile-an-hour wind in Bristol, so you just make sure you're kicking it without behind you, your goal.
So do you have like a specific thing that you're going to teach? Or are you sliding one way? Are you kicking it one side? Or is it vary team by team that you're coming up against? Or is it
a lot of the time, actually, a lot of the time at club level, I found that the kickoff was not based on doing something, it was based on not doing something. So for example, if I'm looking and I've got if you've got 48 and 65 back there, do not kick the ball to 48, so it was kind
don't kick the Josh Amos.
Well, exactly, those types of things. Everybody knew those players that you just wanted to avoid, so there was quite a bit of that went on. But I think with these ones, again, coming down to limited practice, a lot of it was teaching aggression, speed off the line, because you don't want to create those, you don't want to create vertical separation between your players by being slow, because that gives those massive diagonals for people to run the ball through. So be fast and aggressive off the line, run right on the opposition's toes, beat them as efficiently as you can, and maintain lane discipline. That's always been my kind of philosophy of keep it simple. And then that's when the multidisciplinary aspect of really being a team that focuses on fundamentals comes in, because it's like what you teach them about tackling in everything else they do then comes into play in this. It's not like we've got this special kind of type of magic tackling that we use in these situations. So yeah, you kind of just rely on that at that point.
Yeah.
Chris Peel sent another message in. Scott, sorry, carry on, Scott.
I was just going to sort of further to that point that Spooner was making. First thing, if you tell your kicker not to kick to 65, he's going to kick to 65, right? It's sod's law. That's exactly what's going to happen, right? It's the way it is. Sorry, not to kick to 48. 48 is going to get the ball. That's sod's law. That's what's going to happen. And the other thing is, I teach my guys, and I'm really big on this, is leverage the football. Like if you start off on a kickoff team, if you're on the right hand side of the returner, you're not going to end up on the left hand side of the returner. You always keep that guy on your inside shoulder and trying to leverage it. And I want to make them think it's like a big net. It's like a massive net. You're traveling downfield like a big fisherman's net sort of thing, all right? And you're going to envelop that ball carrier. And also, the way the game is going, taking that sort of like kamikaze contact out of it is that's what I try and teach them as in the net. You're closing to a net. You come to balance. You leverage the football. And we want, in an ideal world, I want all 10 kickoff cover guys right around the ball carrier at the end of the play. That's how I try and get them to do it. And if a little bit of that sticks, then I think we're in good shape with enough of those players,
Yeah, we basically, like, the main rule that we, at Lions, not anymore, adhered to, same as Scott, just like entire focus.
Well, I dropped out.
No, you're still here, mate.
and entire focus on outside shoulder, outside hip. So if you start on the whichever shoulder you start outside of, whichever hip you just don't take your eyes off it and make sure you keep your leverage there. Like just outside, Scott, you obviously described it as inside shoulder, inside hip, but thinking about the player, we just do it looking downfield at the outside shoulder, outside hip. But yeah, absolutely the same principle. Just make sure that you maintain leverage and close on your leverage.
Yeah. Cool. On to the point of the kamikaze contact, actually, in special teams, I think it's something that's been quite beneficial. The removal of that has been quite beneficial to coaching kickoff return, because the danger was before, it was like the return team just thought, if these guys are coming downfield full bore for contact, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And in a lot of cases, you saw whiffed blocks, you saw guys, just getting absolutely olayed. And in fact, now the fact that they concentrate much more on position and just washing those on-rushing kickoff team players out of the way can actually generate huge return lanes if you do it smartly. So I think that's one area where the reduction of the massive contact and those kind of kamikaze approaches has actually been quite useful from a coaching perspective.
How many people put their best 11 on kickoff or kickoff return, or do you put in not quite the best people?
I've put the best players for those things. So we have drills that specifically focus on this, because there's, again, like anybody else, I've got certain things I want, and I think that speed off the line, that ability to beat the block, get back over the top, and maintain lane discipline. I want guys that go 100 miles an hour. So back to Scott's point earlier on, it's you create an atmosphere as the coach of. It's almost like SEAL Team 6. It's like you guys might be specialists, you might be great players on offense or defense, but if you want to make it to the field on special teams, which is the top of the mountain now, you better be bringing everything you got on this. Not just you're good at, because I've seen even with teams I've played for historically, we would put our best offensive and defensive players on special teams, but they were always kind of protecting themselves and maintaining a certain amount in the tank for those key, because they were, say, like a star defensive end, and they wanted to be able to show their wares in that situation, so they didn't really put everything in the specials. So I think it's the best guys at specials.
For kickoff, for me, it's the best. Well, I have my 5 best players and then 1 kicker, and then I rep 5 other guys in. That's what I do, because I'm onside kick. So I'm just going to kick it where those 5 guys are. Every time. But that's
so for example, if you're kicking it left, you have your best 5 guys on the left.
No, we line up. We huddle to start off with, so we'll huddle over the ball.
You go straight from the huddle.
Yeah, so we'll huddle, split, and kick. Yeah. So we don't have that. We don't give them a chance. We let them line up, and we in the huddle decide which guy we're kicking it at, because we're kicking at a guy 9 times out of 10. I don't know why people decide. I don't know why people put their big offensive lineman looking guys on the front row every time. Stop doing it. I'm going to kick it at you every time.
The danger
drives me mad.
The danger with your approach, though, Adam, is that visually I wasn't that impressive as a player. Do you know what I mean? I looked kind of podgy and like I might not be in shape, but athletically and hands-wise, I was devastating. So if you picked on me with that nonsense.
But if I bounce it at your face cage, if you catch it, well done. If not, in my opinion, realistically,
over for you.
Yeah, man, I don't mind. Like, in my opinion, I'm only losing really 30 yards ish with a chance of getting the ball back, because the level that we're coaching at, I don't think we can kick it far enough, and I assume they're going to return it 10 to 15 yards.
I absolutely agree with you to the other point. In amongst my nonsense, I absolutely agree with that. Offensive lineman on the front line, that is a historic thing, and that's another area where British coaches often, it's like, because that was what we did on the team I played on, that's what we'll do in the team I coach on, even though I can't really explain why I do it. I'm just doing it because we've always done it, and that's a recipe for disaster, because like you say, you just drop the ball in short, and more often than not, it's a scramble for a ball that somebody hasn't been able to recover.
Yeah.
Probably a throwback to when you used to have big wedges, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, for us, I mean, we recovered over 70% of our kicks last year. Well, 2 years ago, whenever it was. And I'll take that all day. And even if one time it cost us a game. Where they recovered it and then scored from it. Like, they didn't score from the kick itself. They scored from that drive starting early. That was the only time. So I'll take that. All day. So, next question, anyways, without me bragging about onside kicking every time. And if you're watching, it was Teesside that fucking scored on it, pricks. Right. So, fair catch procedure. What is the fair catch procedure?
Don't do it, because that means you have to have someone who can catch the ball.
So what is it though? What is it?
So the fair catch procedure is effectively a situation where you are going to make no attempt to return the ball, but you're almost going to take a mark as you would in some rugby situations by stopping the play at that point. The returner puts his hand in the air, waves, takes possession of the ball, and then they can't be hit by the opponents unless the ball is effectively bounces out of their hands and goes live. There's a lot can go wrong. There's a lot can go wrong. I also think with the fair catch thing is, as soon as they do it, it's suddenly like a massive, like, do you remember the old National Lottery adverts with the "it could be you" finger? It's kind of like as soon as they call that fair catch, that massive finger comes out of the sky, and it's like every pair of eyes in the universe is now looking right at you. So you better get this right, and it's asking for it to go horribly wrong. But the idea is that you're just effectively going to take the ball at the point at which it's caught, not attempt to return it. You're going to give your returner some element of safety, and then you'll go from there.
And it can't be just a little wave in front of your face. It's got to be a full extension.
Yeah.
I love it when they try to do this one though, and then catch it and then get leveled. That's great. That still gets called in BAFA, but anyway. So, on the fair catch, do you practice it or do you not at all? Do you just assume the guys are knowing, or are you actually practicing that?
We do it at GB level because that is our punt return, or was.
Yeah. Scott, what about you? Do you guys practice it?
Yeah, I mean, we don't particularly practice fair catching, but we have our returners catch footballs at every practice. I mean, we inform them of it and we make sure that they know of it. But to be honest with you, in the British game, I'm happy if a returner catches the ball, because I think if you go to any game, maybe, let's say, maybe 2 out of 5 returns are dropped where people, sort of go to catch them. Because it's a lot of pressure. It's like what Nelly said there. I'm sorry, Spoonie said there. It's like, you've got so much pressure. You put your arm up for a fair catch sort of thing. Like you say, all of a sudden the whole team's looking at you, the whole sideline's looking at you, and the rest of your own team are going, "Oh, don't drop it, don't drop it." It's a lot of pressure. It really is, And to be honest with you, as a special teams guy, I'm just happy if my guys can catch the football. Okay, if they can catch it, and not have it bounce off their helmet, shoulder pads, chest, or anything like that. So, and the only way you get better at that is repetition. That's the only way to do it, is have your guys catch footballs. That's the only way they're going to get confident at it, is catch footballs after practice, or in practice,
Yeah.
sorry.
I only ever taught, in the 4 years I was head coach with the juniors at East Kilbride. I only had 1 year where I actually spent any time specifically focusing on fair catches. And to Scott's point, that was only because that particular year we had a number of returners who we'd had for at that point 3 years, and so they were much more proficient than most guys. In most years, your turnover's so consistent, especially at junior, that it was just a case of spend that time focusing on catching the football.
And the chances of the punt actually being anywhere near where the returner is are fairly
That's
slim.
the other thing, isn't it?
It's just going to get shanked, let's be honest.
Straight off the side of the Toblerone shoe of the punter.
Might hit the first down marker.
In a lot of cases, actually, for punting in the UK, the long snapper would be as well just picking the ball up and spiking it and then just jogging to the sideline. That'd probably do it. We'll just take it there, thanks.
Here's one for you, right? Which I was going to ask this earlier and I completely forgot. when you're teaching your kickoffs, how are you getting the kicker to place the ball on the tee?
However they want.
Yeah.
Within reason. I mean, if they want a slight tilt, they can have a slight tilt. I'm not going to be...
No, but I mean actual ball in itself. Are you having it so the laces are facing out and stuff?
Have you watched Ace Ventura? Adam.
I have, but I've got a. This is what I was going to ask you. See, right? So that's for a field goal, right?
It's funny you should say that. On my video, I was going to do a section on. I couldn't find any information about the laces necessarily having to face the goal, because I think you're then kicking a seam. You're not kicking a panel. So I think the laces should be turned sort of slightly.
They should on a kickoff for me, right?
But
I'll tell you why.
To say why it should be, because I think a kicker should be hitting the panel, not the seam.
I'll show you why. Right, there's the laces. Right, if you look on this little tiny ball, it's a bit different on a bigger one, but the bigger one normally the valve's around here. In the kick in the valve, it's the hardest point in the ball, so when you hit it, you get more contact and it goes further.
You're kicking it too high if you're kicking that.
No, but the valve's lower down, mate, and you tilt the ball for a start, don't you? So it's on the tee like that. So you're facing down. So when you get your contact, you're coming up and getting leverage.
Adam, as a general question about these coaches' round tables, what percentage of the questions you asked are just asked so that you can share some of your extremely dubious coaching wisdom with them?
No. The reason I asked that is because I wanted to get in my mind, if I'm picking this up off the wrong sort of people, I want to know if other people are doing the same thing. Doing the right thing.
The only thing I could find is for high level kickers that if the laces just turn slightly, then you can draw or hook the ball like you would a golf ball. But
I had that.
I found anybody at our level can do that sort of manipulation on a kick.
I took it. So we done an article a while ago on it was actual just kicking in general, and they went down to how soccer players are taking their free kicks with their ball and they're hitting the valve so they can hit it with more power. And it was a full sports science thing. And
that's, to be fair, that was the Cristiano Ronaldo thing. That was how he generated so much movement. He would have the valve facing front and center directly, and he would lash the ball on the valve to create that wobble, because obviously the valve is the only point at which the bladder is outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think again to the earlier points we've made, so I think Alex Linkowski is probably the only kicker I can think of in my 15, 16 years in the game who has really spent the sort of hours that would be required for these little things to really make a dramatic difference. Most people who are kickers in the UK game do it as a second or third or fourth addition to the things they do for that team. So again, I think it's just often a case of let them try things out and see what they can do best with.
I'm surprised there aren't more kickers, stroke punters that go from our country over to college, because there's that big Australian setup, and they've got dozens upon dozens and dozens of kickers that are getting scholarships because they play AFL or rugby.
Did anybody follow the CFL draft, the international draft that we had a few guys in? Because
we did
follow it, but a few of the guys I spoke to were saying that was just full of exactly that, full of Australia.
Punter went first, didn't he?
Was that right? Yeah.
Number one pick, I believe, was a punter.
I'll tell you now,
off the top of my head.
I know that we had. Oh,
I'm surprised there isn't some kind of setup for sending. Rugby
punter from Australia went first.
There were quite
punter went 6. Yeah, punter went 6. Punter went 7. Punter went 8. That's unreal.
Australia have a specific setup for this, though, don't they? This isn't just like random dudes that downloaded the form off the website and turned up. They've really got a kind of pipeline created. And to be honest, if we're serious about really driving up our representation at high school and college and beyond in the US, it's not a bad idea to have specific pathways that focus on because again, back to Scott's point of earlier on, we have so many sports in this country where kicking the ball is fundamental, and it could be a way of us actually, rather than just saying anyone who's that naturally kind of gifted, freakish, massive sort of guy can maybe go and make it to the States. Actually, let's focus on really highlighting. And if you did it that way, you'd have the advantage of almost being able to draw players out, draw fringe rugby players out, draw fringe potential goalkeepers out of other sports into ours, because you'd have a pathway for them to potentially go and do something quite different and be successful at it. I guess
for me, if we want more players in college and in the NFL, I think we've got to go down the kicking route and the long snapping route. We need to get good at that long snapping. I think that the special teams is where we've got a chance of getting players to go over the most.
I can't see anyone taking a long snapper. Kickers, yeah, but I think long snappers, I think there's too many out there already.
Nah, I think if you're a specialist long snapper and you can go out and you can snap the ball unbelievably well, you're going to get a space in college. And then if you prove yourself in college, you can go elsewhere. You can get
One
your
of the
education
challenges-
paid for. If you can get
One
your
of the-
education paid for from long snapping the ball, get practicing the garden now.
One of the challenges, I think, though, especially if you think of the top level in the US around that, is long snappers' careers are like 20 years long.
Hell yeah.
You know, Zach,
Yep.
Zach Dawsey at the Giants I think he's just retired. He's been there forever. Like Patrick Manley, who I've got a funny story about him. I'll tell you one day. But he was at the Bears. He was the guy that ran the Long Snapper website, and he was like a real sort of a real guru of that stuff. He was like the longest tenured Bear. He was at the Bears for legitimately like 20 years or something. So that's the challenge that, if you want to make it pro as a long snapper, they're going to have one on the books and he'll be there for 2 decades. So the likelihood of you getting that job is slim. Whereas kickers, while you get some guys like Vinatieri and stuff that kick for a long time, it's also quite it's quite a flaky job. So people once they start to dip, they're out the door.
Of course, at the pro level, there's not as many jobs for a long snapper, but college, fucking hundreds of colleges that's going to pay for someone to go and do that. Hundreds. Like we've said it ourselves how important it is on that special team to get a good long snapper. If you can long snap for a punt and you can long snap for a field goal, and it comes out like a rocket every time.
Yeah.
If you can,
colleges also specifically recruit long snappers, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you see them on. If you look at any Alabama's incoming class, they're likely to always have at least a long snapper on there that they've recruited out of some high school, and that's a kid who's getting a free ride to national champions. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you can develop that skill, I always say if you can develop your special team skill, you double your worth. You know what I mean? You really, really do. And if you've got a guy that's talented and can do that, that is a pathway that you can exploit easily.
If you're like a big linebacker or something like that, and you're working on getting your speed up or something to fit into that linebacker position, while you're doing that, practice your long snapping. Because if you might get good enough to be a long snapper, and then when your speed gets up or you peak at a higher age, you might get put in at linebacker as well. It's worth a shot.
When the NFL International Player Program was still around, actually, we at the Pirates had, obviously Ryan Hunter was pretty prolific and he was involved in it right through a couple of years, right up until they folded it. But the first year we had Rab Beveridge, our left tackle, involved, and he went there originally as an offensive lineman, and he was one of the standout offensive linemen in the UK, and he was a big, strong guy, a huge kind of work ethic. But of course, once he was in that environment for International Player Program, he kind of, his physical stature didn't seem that impressive anymore because he's up against huge dudes from all over the world. But he managed to stay within that program way beyond those kind of physical limitations because of his long snapping, and he almost went to the stage where he went as an old lineman and then transitioned into that special teams role. And he didn't make it all the way through, but he was heavily involved for a long time because he had that capability. So yeah, again, as I think you just flashed up a quote from John Wise, it can get you in a plane for sure.
For me, I just think honestly, like there's a set that we've got skills over here in those certain positions. Like the long snap, it's not too dissimilar from passing the ball in rugby. Do you know what I mean? It's just underneath your legs. Do you know what I mean? That's all. It's not too different in as such. A punt, it's just clearing the ball in rugby with kicking it out your hands as a goalkeeper. Kids are doing it at school every friggin' day, man. Get involved in this sport. You're gonna earn some money, or you get your education paid for at least.
Yeah. It's just the way you sell it, though, isn't it? Because I think it's always the challenge you've always got with American sports, and particularly ours, is that, if you're a goalkeeper blasting the ball out of your hands, that's only one of the things you do as a goalkeeper. If you're a punter, that is the entirety of your job. It's the same way as a specialist long snapper. That pass in rugby is one of the things you do. As a long snapper, that long snap is the entirety of your job, and it's the way that our sport compartmentalizes and makes things so niche can be a tough sell, I think.
You do it like what Shane Warne done for cricket. He literally had 2 different types of balls, and he was telling people he could ball 7 different things. Tell him, you can fade it one way, you can draw it the other way, you can get it to go end over end, you can do this. See if you can practice all of them. Have a go at doing that. Get them doing something, man. Like kicking the ball, just boot it forward. Just come out here and just put it out at that 1 yard line if you can, mate. Have a shot. Frig. I love it. I love special teams, even though I just onside kick.
You love special teams, even though you desecrate the grave of special teams every time you are coaching. That's what you're saying.
You say that, right? But I think I show it a hell of a lot of respect by how much I practice it. Because we practice it a lot.
Jokes aside, I think the fact that you actually look at what your team is capable of and pick something that gives them the highest chance of success on that basis it's just smart coaching. It's what everybody should be doing in every phase of their game, you know. Look at what your guys are actually capable of and, you know, really drill that and make them great at it.
So the last question, because we've run over anyway, so we've run over by like 20 minutes, so I do apologise. The last question, what is the most valuable phase of special teams in your opinion?
I mean,
Ooh.
Yeah.
For me, it changes field position. It changes field position for you. I mean, it's, you know, if you look at any game, I mean, you know, a prime example is a couple of years ago now, we played the GB Juniors, that is, we played in France against the Pole Academy. And if you do a breakdown of where we actually started, where they started with the ball, I mean, we got hammered. It was like 62-7 or something like that. We got hammered. But if you look at the drive chart about where they started with the ball, be that because of, you know, turnovers, but more generally punts sort of thing. If they started on our side of the 50, they scored. The 5 or 6 times they didn't, they didn't score. So it's changing field position. And for me, you know, that is the key thing. I mean, if you look at anything through stats, you know, it will tell you that, you know, if you can win that field position battle, I know it sounds like a cliche, but it is true. It's like if you can punt and change the way the field looks, I think that's so key in football and at any level.
I think to reinforce that, and back to the, you know, the British example, especially at the club level, one of the things that you find is if you force a team to put together a sustained drive of the majority of the field without making a mistake, more often than not, teams just cannot do it. I mean, the very best ones, of course, can, but more often than not, teams will find a way to defeat themselves. So if I put you back 100%. Inside your own 20 and say, right, you've got to go, well, on a 90-yard field, 70 yards, and you've got to do it without any mistakes that cost you the ball, then, and you can do it, then fair play to you for beating me, you know. So I'd agree. I think being able to pin people deep consistently is so important. And then ultimately you can generate opportunity for your offense by you know, you send your defense on absolutely foaming at the mouth when you pin them deep, and you know, if you can get a turnover there or do something special, it can really be a big momentum shift.
Yeah, 100% punt.
That was meant to be the last one, but Chris is whinging, so I'll ask this one. Sorry. Why special teams just counted as kick and play? Should goal line be counted as special teams also?
I think that comes back to the point I made really early on about that discussion between the special teams coordinator and the defensive coordinator, for example, where it's like, at what point are we classing this situation as a specialist special teams play versus are we doing something, you know? Because if you've got a really strong goal line package, you know, then there may be times when you bring that out in support of, you know, blocking field goals, for example, you know, tweaks to it through that. So, yeah, it's a fair point. It's a fair point.
There's no barriers to it. If you want to call it special teams or part of your special teams, just group it in as part of your special teams. There's nothing to prevent you from doing it, so it's entirely up to the person. I personally,
it's almost like a fourth down play, if you like. You know, if you're at midfield or something, and you know it's that conversation had between the head coach and the offensive coordinator, and they say, look, it's 4th and 1. You know, if we go for it here and we don't get it, obviously we put the defense in a situation. But that again is, you could view that almost as a special teams, because you're making that decision not to kick the ball, you're making that decision to go for it. But obviously that affects your field position. So it's almost like you kind of, it's all integrated. I think anyway on those sort of situations.
Special situation, not special teams.
I'm glad you said that, Scott, because whether it's 4th and 1 or 4th and 21. We're going for it on 4th down at my team, man. That's what we're doing. It's just how we do it, man.
But he does love special teams, guys.
You've got no idea.
He's never run a special teams play in his life. He just goes.
That's why he loves them.
You've got no idea how many times we've got that ball back.
I think
most important one for me is kickoff. Kickoff, that's the most important part of special team. We're getting the ball back.
I think on that point though, and to kind of draw a line under this, that this is something that I think separates the good from the great in British American football, is the teams that take the time in practice and in their preparation to think about situational football. Where are you on the field? Which hash are you on? What is the time looking like? What's the score saying? These are the things that really, when it gets to the nitty gritty, can make a difference. And for a lot of teams, just being able to tackle and block and catch and pass effectively would take them from where they are to significantly further on. But the really top end teams, these are the types of things that separate them.
Completely agree. So I would just say thanks very much for coming on, guys. I really do appreciate it. So if you haven't seen the videos yet, there is some videos posted on the BAFCA Facebook page about special teams. Go and take them a look. Yeah, go give them a look. Go give them a like, share, follow, whatever you can. I much appreciate it for coming on. Thanks very much, guys. Take care.
Cheers, fellas.
Everyone.